you remember, like Bob Clark and Doug Campbell.
Rob Clark and Joe Bordelli.
Oh, you gotta give him that hawk too and spit on that thing.
In the heart of Dallas, where legends unfold, a tale of shadows, mysteries untold, but truth is obscured in the depths of the night. The Lone Gunman Podcast sheds a flickering light.
Section 107 of the Fair Use Act of 1976 provides protection to use copyrighted material for research, analysis, education, and commentary purposes. We here at Loose Moose Productions reserve that right. Now, on with the show. Here's Joe B and the Triple B. Hey, Aunt Udine, how's things in Texas?
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
Hands on Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rob Cock and Joe Morelli. Triple B and Joe B. Joe B and Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joe B. Rob Cock and Joe Morelli. And here we go.
And here we go. Kind of.
Yes. Our apologies for not being live tonight. It is all Joe's fault for having prior familial commitments. But it's okay. It happens every once in a while. But we are here with you on this, in the future, Friday evening, for episode number 305, Receipts from New Orleans, episode of the Lone Gunman Podcast. I am Big Bad Bob. Rob Clark here with you. And along with me, as always, is the ever handsome and now belly full Joe Borelli. What's up, Joe?
Hey, what's up, Rob? And yes, I do take full responsibility. It is my fault. I'm actually going to blame it on my girlfriend. I'm going to just act like an intelligent agency and blame it on the other agency. And parents coming in for the weekend, her mom's 70th. And of course, Rob, guess what time she books a reservation at a really nice restaurant in town on Friday?
7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. So my conspiratorial mind goes, is this a test type of thing? So,
well, you're passing the test because you are dedicating your time to them as you should.
yes.
We can do this whenever, and we are doing it whenever. We are doing it in the past.
Or you said the future. I was like, or maybe the past.
Well, they'll be seeing it in the future, but we're doing it in the past.
Right. But thank you for your flexibility, sir. And thank you for everyone's flexibility. Maybe we'll pop in the chat and say hi during the live broadcast. You never know.
Should see my back bends, Joe. I'm very flexible. All right. So first off, and I promise you, we will get into New Orleans. I promise you. But we have, along with all of you all, probably have heard it by now, but if you haven't, some very big news in the JFK research community. So without further ado, Joe, let's show the people what is going on.
Sure. And let's preface it by we are looking at this from a strictly JFK research standpoint. This is not a pro-Trump. This is not anti-Trump. This is not a pro-RFK Jr. This is not anti-RFK Jr.
I'll just say, if you're a JFK researcher, this should pique your interest.
Yes. So without further ado.
And maybe rethink your vote. But so I think if it goes the other way, we ain't getting them. But here we go.
Here we go.
I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts. And they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And they will also conduct a rigorous review of the attack last month. But I tell you, I have never had more people ask me, please, sir, release the documents on the Kennedy assassination. And we're going to do that.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. They are going to do it. And they enlisted the help of RFK Jr. to do it, which is pretty insane. But there's more. There is more, folks.
And Rob, I just want to say that I did a few months ago, when this topic came up, I did actually call Trump out for saying he was going to release them the first time, right, during his first term. He did not. I called him out on that. This was obviously before RFK Jr. kind of came on, or whatever role he's going to have. So it's not like I'm being one way or the other. I think it's just, if you're looking at this from a straight JFK research document standpoint, I think it's pretty obvious which person would release the files, which party ticket.
Yeah, if there's any chance at all, and Trump gets elected, I mean, this could all be a giant smoke show. But the fact that he brought it up and brought in RFK Jr. is telling. So let's hear some more from RFK Jr. And sorry for the dog shit audio a minute ago.
If you were asked, would you run it? Would you become CIA director if you were asked?
I would never get, yes, I would, but I would never get Senate confirmation. As you know, the intelligence agency are protected by very, very powerful committees in the Senate and in the House that are already into the project. And the people who serve on those committees are people who would, they would not, they're safeguarding that directorship. And I would be very, very dangerous for those committees. So I don't think that.
And yet in his, in your joint appearance on Friday, President Trump introduced you by saying that he plans to, if elected, establish a commission to declassify the remaining documents around your uncle's murder in 1963.
Yeah.
And I think everyone at this point knows the truth, which is the CIA is implicated in that. Those documents protect CIA, maybe among others.
Well, whether they do or not, I mean, it's odd that they've not allowed them to be released.
What could possibly be the explanation?
More than 60 years after my uncle's death, almost 65 years. 62 years after his death. And none of the people who were implicated in that crime are alive now.
Yes.
The last ones have died off in the last year or two. And so it clearly is to protect the institution.
Yes.
And that's wrong. It's just wrong. And it's wrong for a Democrat and it's wrong for Republicans.
It's just interesting, though, that a bipartisan list of presidents, these 6 decades, have kept those files classified.
Well, you and I have both. I was astonished that Trump didn't declassify him because he promised to during the campaign.
That was Mike Pompeo who did that.
Yeah, and that I talked to President Trump for the first time about that this week. And
what did he say?
He said that Mike Pompeo begged him to. And I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here.
No,
I think he told the same thing to you.
That's true.
But he said Mike Pompeo called him and said this would be a catastrophe to release these. You need to not do it. And I
want to say again, I think Mike Pompeo is a criminal. So that's my view. He's threatened to sue me for saying that, but I hope he will, because it's true. But that kind of tells the whole story right there, right?
So there you have it, folks. The big news. Mm-hmm. And I think, RFK Jr., I don't think he would ever get appointed to be CIA director, but God damn, would that be funny?
Yeah. That would be some poetic justice, huh?
Yes, it would. And everything would fall out of that place. Oh, my God.
And Rob, one thing that, just because I don't want to, not call them out on this, because I've heard them, Tucker, RFK Jr. and other people say this, that there's no one alive that has been implicated, right? Do they not know that Marina was under suspicion for a long time, especially after the Walker letter was found? Buell Wesley Frazier, as you well know, was threatened as being an accomplice, and Ruth Paine is still alive in her 90s.
Yeah.
So I hate when they say this, right? I'm not a Tucker apologist. I'm just being objective here. There are still a few people.
Well, I
that
think
are
they were
very
referring
special.
to CIA personnel, Joe, not like regular Joes, if you will.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But that
But again,
could
I don't know who in the last year or two from the CIA was still alive. You know, from that far back. I mean, my God, they must have been. Well, I guess it's been 62 years. If they were 25, they would have been like 87. Of course, somebody could live to be 95.
there were a couple, but I don't think they were major.
Yeah, I don't know who he's referring to there. To be honest with you, but if Trump gets elected and he follows through on his word to do what he said he's going to do, that would be amazing to finally get all these files released and we can see what they've been hiding all these years for sure. So that's big news, folks.
Yep.
And of course, we'll stay on top of it for sure.
Yeah,
but now,
over a year since any files have been released on the NARA website, which I check
yeah,
pretty often.
yeah. And real quick, before we get into New Orleans, we just wanted to follow up a little bit about the Trump assassination attempt and what Joe has been able to glean, because there has been some news. Some of the Secret Service agents involved that day have been suspended pending an internal investigation. They're likely to be fired, and some other things. So, Joe, go, sir.
Sure. Well, as you remember, Rob, we did a kind of emergency show that was supposed to be kind of short, that maybe wasn't, because that's what we do, on the Trump assassination attempt. It was, I believe, Tuesday night. Or no, it was Monday night, and it happened on a Saturday, right? Because it was 48 hours after. And very limited information was out then. And we're just kind of wanted to follow up. I know we talked a little with Carmine in the week or second week after that about it, and he had some really great things on that and points.
More information keeps spilling out about this thing.
Yeah. So we just wanted to give a quick update. I'm going to keep
More
it short.
footage, more answers to questions.
Yeah. So this is from a Fox News article, and there was a few BBC. I thought this was the most interesting to read. At least 5 members of the U.S. Secret Service have been placed on administrative leave following the July 13th assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. 1 member of Trump's personal protective team, that's someone on the ground with him, and 4 members of the Secret Service Pittsburgh field office, including the special agent in charge, have been sidelined nearly 6 weeks after the incident. The 5 are still employed, but are teleworking, working from home, and are no longer allowed in the field. They cannot do any investigative work. The news comes after the Secret Service concluded internal interviews to understand how Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to fire several shots from the AGR building in Butler, Pennsylvania. The Secret Service was not able to conduct the interviews right away because the FBI was interviewing them for a separate criminal investigation, according to a source. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri on Friday revealed that a Secret Service whistleblower has come forward to claim that the officials at the Secret Service headquarters, I guess he's meaning D.C. there, encouraged agents in charge of the rally not to request any extra security assets in their formal planning request. We know a bullet grazed the right ear, and firefighter Corey Compaditor was struck, and 2 others. The former Secret Service director, Kimberly Heedle, resigned after her disastrous showing in front of Congress. And I listened to hours and hours of that, and she was the most frustrating person ever to listen to. But So that's it. I'm going to leave that there. It's kind of good that at least someone's being held accountable. Now I have my doubts. Are they going to be like reinstated in a couple months and everyone's going to forget about it? Probably, right? But especially if you're talking special agent in charge. But Rob, if you remember, we were talking about how initially how it was probably a failure on the leadership and or advanced teams that set the perimeter, that allegedly denied them of Secret Service assets. And that seems to be true.
Yeah, and the building in question was under the watch of the local law enforcement agencies, and they really dropped the ball on that one. Yeah. And of course, our communication breakdown, not being on the same channels, not having clear instructions until these shots rang out. And speaking of the shots, Joe, I believe you have a shot analysis.
Yeah. So I've been, watching a lot of YouTube videos on people I really trust, in terms of the shot sequence. And we thought there were like 6 to 8 shots initially, but there happened to be 10.
10 shots.
10 shots total. And we're going to go through this, the clip again, but I'll preface it. There were 8 shots fired by Crooks. 3 in the first burst. You're going to hear 5 on the second burst. Then you're going to hear a low thump, which was actually, so there were 3 sniper teams providing overwatch that day. There were 2 Secret Service Hercules sniper teams and 1 Butler County, state of Pennsylvania sniper team. And the sniper team from Butler or whatever county in Pennsylvania actually got the shot off, the 9th shot off after Thomas Crooks' 8th, and hit his gun, resulting in some like fragments like going into his face and him going back down. And then about 10 seconds later, he gets back up, Crooks, and that's when the Secret Service sniper Hercules team that was not kind of possibly obstructed by the tree did the 1 fatal shot and the kill shot. And let me do this right now and bring it up, and we will go through it. And we went through it 48 hours in, but we want to follow up because truth matters. All right.
What happened?
3, right? You're going to hear the next 5 and the... Five shots and the counter sniper shot, which we couldn't hear because it wasn't next to the microphone as well. Pop. That's the Secret Service kill shot that went through the head and neck of Thomas Crooks. So it could have been a lot worse if that Butler sniper, the Pennsylvania County sniper, didn't at least deter him in some way by returning fire and hitting his gun, possibly disabling it. We don't know. The FBI has it, so we'll never find out now. But and then he pops back up, and Secret Service, the Hercules team, had then focused in on him and pop.
Hercules. Thank you, Joe, for that wonderful shot breakdown.
Well, one more thing, Rob.
Yes, sir.
So the reason the Secret Service snipers, remember when we were talking about it initially, we said, I think there was a breakdown in communication. Well, the local law enforcement and the state law enforcement had a meeting where they were talking about the different radio frequencies they were going to be on. And the Secret Service did not show up to that meeting. They did not pick up the walkie-talkies to get on the same frequency as the local and state law enforcement. So when you see all the local and state guys kind of circling around the AGR building before, right, and the minute a little more that before the shots were fired, they didn't know because they didn't have comms with the local and state guys. And I don't know if that's out of complete negligence or arrogance or conspiracy. I mean, you could kind of pick whatever one you want, but it's really interesting. And one thing, so I want to follow up on, we talked about the ladder. We saw a picture of the ladder there. We're like, how the hell did this kid get the ladder near the building, right? Well, he actually didn't. That picture was for a few minutes after the police got up onto the roof, right? So maybe 10, 15 minutes after the shooting, whenever. And although he had a ladder receipt in his pocket from Home Depot or wherever, he didn't bring a ladder. That was the Secret Service or whatever state and local ladder they brought in, whatever they could find. One thing that I still want to know is, we heard a lot about explosive devices, right? He had bombs in his car with a remote detonator. Nothing about that whatsoever. And of course, you have the FBI washing off the roof a couple days after, which is pretty sus. And I just thought I'd update you on those points because we want to follow up, and it's intriguing yet frustrating. Not sure we're going to know a ton more than what I kind of just explained. There are a lot of good videos on YouTube and creators that are doing great analysis on this, but just wanted to follow up on that.
Unless we get that commission created by Trump, headed by RFK Jr., to investigate the assassination attempt. So we will stay on top of it and keep you posted for sure. So from Butler, Pennsylvania, we go to New Orleans.
New Orleans, Mr. Gasson.
We go to New Orleans, Joe. But we're going back in time, folks. Going back in time. So this, folks, is the infamous 544 Camp Street. And on one side, Mancuso's restaurant on the corner, and 731 Lafayette on the other side. And as you can see, it's stamped there on one of Lee Harvey Oswald's handouts. This was the office of private investigator Guy Banister and Associates back in 1963. And I believe he was at 731 Lafayette, and 544 Camp Street is right around the corner. Same building though. Now there was a lot, Joe, of witnesses who put Lee Harvey Oswald inside of Guy Banister's office and talking to Guy Banister. Okay. Now, back at that time, Guy Banister was into a lot of shady things. He was also very anti-Castro, anti-communist. He was collecting files on people. And everybody knows, Guy Banister's former FBI, big wheel in the FBI, did a lot of cool stuff there. And then, of course, he comes down to New Orleans and, to help out the New Orleans Police Department there. And he gets into a little trouble with a handgun. And that's the end of his little career there, except for, going into business as a private investigator. And, of course, shortly thereafter, in June of 1964, he would be dead already. So the reason I'm showing you this is because I came across something, Joe, and it's very interesting. In the Garrison files, if you see this business card, Martin, Newborough, and Dalzell, private investigators. And apparently, this is the business card of these three guys from 1960, 61, 62, using Banister's office telephone numbers. Okay. So they're working out of, they're running a business out of Guy Banister's office and likely doing business for Guy Banister. And the Martin here is, of course, Jack Martin, who was infamously pistol whipped on the evening of November 22nd, 1963. Newborough is, of course, Joseph Newborough, the fat man, who we're going to see here in a little bit. And, of course, Dalzell is William Dalzell, alleged CIA asset, among other things. So, first off, Joe, I want to show you something that I had never seen before. Okay, and this is, I wish I could make it bigger. This is the New Orleans Police Department report of offense against persons. Okay, and it is dated 11/22/63. The victim's name is Jack Martin. And it's basically saying that he was pistol whipped by an unknown make and model revolver.
Beaten on the head with pistol. Something negative. Yeah.
Was victim sober? And it says had been drinking. And he was marked off as sudden anger. Okay. Said he was taken to Charity Hospital, beaten on head with pistol. Homo negative, whatever that means. I guess it wasn't gay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So this was part one of the report. And this is part two of the report. Lieutenant Francis Martello respectfully reports at about 6:45 p.m. on Friday, November 22nd, of having received a radio signal. Number 58, it was learned from the radio operator that department, somebody, had received a telephone call that Jack Martin, age 47, residing at 1311 North Pryor Street, was pistol whipped by Guy Banister. And it goes on to tell a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but to basically wrap this up, he was met at the hospital by the police, taken down to the headquarters, and Jack Martin declined. He declined to press charges on Guy Banister. He says Jack Martin was transported to the hospital, Baptist Hospital, in patrol car number 11. In the hospital, he was photographed. I'd like to see those photographs.
Yeah.
Technician Claire Olson. Upon examining Martin's head, he had 3 small lacerations on the forehead and 1 laceration on the rear of his head. Jack Martin was asked again if he was to press charges, and he stated he did not, as Banister was like a father to him, and that he had worked for him, and as far as he was concerned, it was nothing to get irritated about. However, he could not understand why Banister hit him with his gun. Martin then stated, "No, I do not wish to press charges at this time." He was asked what did he mean by this, and he replied that he didn't want to hurt Banister, but did not want to press charges at this time. So basically, they even interviewed Delphine Roberts, who was interviewed, and she stated that she would not make any comment on the advice of Mr. Banister's attorney, which is funny. Because Guy Banister basically said the same thing. They went to talk to Guy Banister, and he says, concerning the complaint of Jack Martin, and Mr. Banister stated that he would not comment about this matter upon the advice of his attorney. Due to the victim, Jack Martin, not wishing to press any charges against Mr. Banister, he was not arrested. However, the office of the Honorable District Attorney is to be consulted in this matter. Respectfully, Lieutenant Francis Martello. So this is very interesting. I'd never seen this actual New Orleans police report before. And of course, it doesn't go into any specifics about the reason for the argument. Okay. It was basically he had accused in this police report, basically Banister had accused, allegedly, Martin of making long distance telephone calls from his office. Martin's response was, "Well, I work for Guy Banister sometimes, and if I'm making long distance calls from his office, then that's what I'm supposed to do. But actually, I haven't done it for over a year, made any long distance calls out of his office." So he didn't know what Banister was so upset about. And of course, it's alleged that other things were said concerning the Kennedy assassination, and that's what set Banister off.
Mhm.
But we just don't know for sure.
No.
Now,
And we know the JFK movie, in regards to that, might not be the most accurate in terms of their actual conversation or reason why this altercation happened. Right.
Well, I mean, the other witness, Delphine Roberts, was interviewed by Anthony Summers in like the late 70s. And I believe the HSCA talked to Delphine Roberts as well. And she basically said the same thing, that Oswald was in Banister's office, frequently in the summer of 63. And that basically that the argument was over the Kennedy assassination and some files. But how reliable is she? Who knows? But let's take a look at the second name on that business card, who was Joe Newborough, the fat man. And we're going to see what he had to say about what was going on in Banister's office. Okay, so check this out.
Marker. Did Guy Banister, the private detective, was he collecting intelligence?
Yes, in a number of areas, Guy Banister collected intelligence. He worked for various groups, public and private.
Which public ones?
I don't know. Other than that, sometimes we did work for the Office of Naval Intelligence.
How do you know that?
I was acquainted with Guy Johnson, who was the commander of the Office of Naval Intelligence Reserve component here. We borrowed things from him. We wouldn't have been able to do that unless we were also working for him.
What things?
Surveillance equipment, infrared, listening devices, cameras, miniaturized television sets, things like that.
Did Mr. Banister work for the FBI?
He retired as special agent in charge of the Chicago office from the FBI around 1955 to assume duties as the deputy superintendent of police, with the idea that within 6 months he would replace the superintendent. It was Banister's intention to write a book on how to clean up the New Orleans Police Department so it could be used as a textbook throughout the country.
What I meant was, did Guy Banister Associates work for the FBI?
As a matter of practice, the FBI doesn't hire such groups. It's in opposition to federal law for the government to hire a detective agency of the type and style of Pinkerton or something like that. It's called the Pinkerton Act. So if anything was done for the FBI, it was done very informally.
Banister had 1013 files around the office, didn't he?
Yes.
How did they... Sorry, I'll ask you that question again. What kind of files did Banister have around that office?
Well, among his files were probably the complete file of every known communist in the United States, about 28,000. He also kept political files on the senior side of local and state political officials, and perhaps some national figures too.
Didn't he also have files which are labeled 1013 files?
The 1013 files were essentially the subversive files involving individuals.
But aren't 1013 files FBI files?
You mean, did he get files from the FBI? The answer is probably not. Did he keep them at home when he was the agent in charge, he may have.
So he may have had them, but not
officially.
Just make that a statement, if he had them.
No, he did not have any official FBI files. Nobody would have them but the Bureau itself.
But he could have had official files unofficially.
Yes, unofficially he could have had in possession files.
And isn't 1013 an FBI form of categorization?
Yes, it is.
Just cut that one out.
Marker.
What kind of files did Banister have in his office? What were they called?
Well, there was the 1013 files, which is an FBI type of designation for communist attributions of different people holding public office, and it could extend into other things too.
The FBI files?
Well, it's an FBI designation. Were they actually FBI files? The answer was no. He did not directly get them from the FBI, but he could have acquired them.
Why was a private detective collecting so many files on communists?
Well, of course, his attitude was bent in anti-communism, which few people in the United States were not anti-communist at that time, and they were considered to be a general threat to the country as a whole.
How many files did he have?
He had the files of 28,000 known communists in the United States.
Who paid him to collect that?
I presume that it was both public and private organizations that paid him.
You presume or you know?
Well, I know that he did not have the funding himself to do it, and that there was private funding from one was H.L. Hunt. Local private funding came from Judge Leander Perez. There was also Buford H.J. Balta locally, and there was, of course, probably government agencies that used Banister personally because they could not contract with a detective agency officially because of what is called the Pinkerton Act.
Was Lee Harvey Oswald in those files?
I don't know.
Cut that.
Marker.
To your knowledge, did Guy Banister have any association with Cuban paramilitaries?
Yes, he did.
Can you make that a statement, Joe?
He had a connection with the Cuban military group that was formed primarily as a magnet to attract subversives. Now, whether or not they really intended to do anything, I don't know. One time Banister asked me if I could remember how to field script a light machine gun. I said yes, and he suggested that we go across the lake to a training place near Slidell, Louisiana, about 35 miles from here, and I field scripted the machine gun as a demonstration for the so-called trainees.
Cubans?
Oh yes, they were Cubans.
Cut. Good.
Marker.
When you demonstrated the machine gun to those Cubans, who else did you see there? Just Cubans?
Oh no, there were, I saw people there that had recently been discharged from the paratroopers, the Marine Corps, and probably other people that I really couldn't tell you who they were.
What were they?
But they were not, they were Americans, not necessarily of Cuban ancestry.
And what were they doing there?
They were training ostensibly to invade Cuba.
Did you see David Ferry or have any knowledge of him?
I saw Ferry all the time, but I never saw him at this particular training site, but I understand that he was there frequently.
Can you make that a statement, Joe?
In what direction?
Well, let me ask you. Did David Ferry have an involvement with Cuban paramilitaries?
Yes, David Ferry had a daily involvement with the Cubans as a whole. He met with them at a place on Bienville Street almost nightly. I suspect most people know that he did fly into the Bay of Pigs. in a B-25. He made flights to Cuba. He bragged about it before and after the Bay of Pigs. At one time, he went to Guantanamo Bay and landed on the airstrip there and came back with some members of the Cuban family that were local.
Rescued them?
Yes. As a matter of fact, probably a dozen times. He was the conduit for which people were rescued from Cuba.
When he flew over Cuba, was he dropping bombs?
I don't know whether he was dropping bombs or bringing in supplies or what. However, it was not a supply plane, it was a bomber.
When did he have was he involved with Cuban paramilitaries here in America?
He was involved at least with the group in Slidell, which was a paramilitary group. Using the word para is a misnomer. They were military.
What was he doing with them?
I don't know exactly where he fit into their scheme of things, but he was in some leadership capacity of the local Cuban group that was going to invade Cuba.
You said he saw them every night. What was he doing with them every night?
He chit-chatted with them every night, talking about invasion of Cuba, assassinating Castro, anything that would come to mind. I mean, all he was doing was really keeping his hands on.
So, Joe.
Yeah.
I know that's your first time seeing that, as it is likely a lot of other people here. And I know it was 9 minutes, almost 10 minutes long, but I think it's worthy of a listen and a look for
sure.
everything that this guy, because he was around Banister's office back in the time when all this was going on. He knew these people. He knew Guy Banister. He knew Jack Martin. He knew David Ferrie. He's even talking about things about David Ferrie that were written in that book, where we thought it was a fantastic tale about David Ferrie flying a plane down into Cuba and rescuing somebody and getting shot at and getting out of there. Turns out were probably true, or at least that's what he heard from David Ferrie. And the things going on at Lake Pontchartrain with these training camps,
I was going to ask if he was referring to that specifically.
Yeah. So, this stuff is wild. And of course, Banister, and you heard the name that he was funded by, Joe, H.L. Hunt, Leander Perez, okay?
A right-wing,
extreme right-wing, anti-segregationist, anti-communist people. And he was collecting files on communists. And he had a lot of them. And how did he get them? We don't know.
28,000?
Yeah. So if he's so anti-communist, what in the heck is Oswald doing around this guy's office in the summer of 1963? And of course, there was an alleged conversation between, I forget who it was. It might have been Delphine Roberts asking about what this guy, Oswald had been seen handing out these leaflets, right? Pro-Castro, and Banister allegedly told somebody, well, hey, don't worry about him. He's with us. Okay, which would indicate that possibly this whole Fair Play for Cuba Committee New Orleans chapter that Oswald is putting together is just a ploy to attract communist and pro-Castro supporters so that Banister can put him in these files, which makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we go from Newborough, Joe, to another person who was around Banister's office in the summer of 1963 by the name of David Lewis. Okay. And he was, of course, interviewed by Garrison and his people. And in this interview, he's asked about Oswald in Banister's office and other things that were seen. And he states, On this occasion, Oswald was dressed in dark slacks, light blue sports shirt, short sleeves. Carlos, whose last name I don't know, is a well-dressed man. Black hair, black eyes. Of course, he meant brown. Approximately 5'11", very neat. Would assumed he was a businessman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Approximate age, late 20s or early 30s. He was wearing a lightweight suit, either black or dark blue, a mustache, otherwise clean shaven, had an accent, but was not as pronounced as Arkasha's accent, appeared to be highly educated and might be considered as a high-class Spaniard, as was Arkasha. Now, Joe, who do we know? Okay, who do we know named Carlos, who was a businessman, who was well-dressed, who had an accent, who had a mustache? Who do we know?
That would probably be Mr. Carlos Brignier.
Yes. I would concur with that analysis.
Although Carlos Quiroga is another name that popped into my mind when you said Carlos.
Yes, but Quiroga didn't have a mustache.
Okay.
But Bernier did.
Got it. I did not know.
Now, Arkasha Smith had an office, okay, in the Balter building on the second floor.
Was a student at Antioch College.
Prior to 1963. I believe they left the building in 62. Sergio Arkasha Smith is in the same building upstairs from Guy Banister.
It's like the CRC. What was it? Cuban
Yeah,
Revolutionary Council, maybe?
Yeah.
Don't quote us.
Which is interesting. And he says Arkasha Smith was dressed in a sport coat, white shirt, tie, very neat, short and stocky, black hair, dark complexion, talked with a very thick accent. Arkasha Smith, to me, appeared to be the boss. I had only seen Oswald 3 or 4 times in the neighborhood of Lafayette and Camp Streets in the Newman building.
This is Dazell again?
This is David Lewis.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just want to clarify.
A few days either before or after Mancuso's, apparently they went and had a meeting in Mancuso's, I went into Banister's office. I went in and they shut the door to the inner office as if highly confidential. In Banister's office was Banister, David Ferry, Arkasha, and a slim, sandy-haired young man. This man could have very well been Oswald. By the way, Louise Decker, Banister's secretary, happened to be in the office at this time. Another time I remember seeing Carlos and Arkasha Smith and David Ferry. They were walking out of Mancuso's restaurant towards Banister's office. Signed, David F. Lewis, Jr. So, you have all these witnesses putting Oswald and Ferry around Banister's office in the summer of 63,
Yeah.
Now,
I wasn't familiar with his account as well, so thank you for that.
You're welcome, sir. Now, I'm going to play you, Joe, and this is a 3-minute clip of
Another surprise.
Thomas Beckham. Okay. Thomas Beckham is, of course, another New Orleans roustabout there and has been implicated in being involved in some things, they have to do with the assassination, knowing Lee Harvey Oswald. And you're actually going to hear from his HSCA interview, okay, with Bob Burris, exactly what he did and who he saw at the time. And I want you to listen very carefully to what Beckham says and tell me if this man sounds like he's making up stuff telling lies or if he is recounting the truth. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. It's 3 minutes. Here we go.
I delivered a package approximately, I'd say 2 weeks to Dallas prior to the assassination of the president to a Mr. Howard. I went into Mr. G. Ray Gill's office. I was told to go there by Mr. Ferry, which I knew real well. And in his office, they shuffled up some documents which were drawings, that of a map or plots and stuff. There were some pictures of buildings and cars, and it was regular pictures, but they wasn't glossy. They were put inside of an envelope, at which time G. Ray Gill handed me, it was either $100 or $200, told me that I was going to be taken to the airport. I was to deliver this package to Mr. Howard, the executive in. At that meeting was Roswell, was Jack Martin, David Ferris, and a bunch of them, Sergio Concha. Also at that meeting was your Mr. Marcello was at that meeting, they were sitting on a couch. I remember the couch. Let's see now. I delivered the package. Oh, they told me one thing was made a remark was that I was to wear no jewelry, not to talk to any of the airline stewardess, to create any, draw anything to me. My good friend Clayshaw was also there, and the envelope was put in a magazine. They got me a magazine, stuck it inside there. I took a cab from the airport to a place called Executive Inn, that's in Dallas, where I met Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard was upset because when I got out of the cab and was heading there, he tooted for me on his horn. The car was a kind of a raggedy-looking car. I got in, handed him the package, and he leaned against the door as if to face me, but the package was away from me. And I handed it to him just like it was in the magazine. He opened it up, and he looked at me a couple of times, and I fixed to look off in the other direction. And he got real mad. He said, this can't be all. This can't be all it is. I don't know the exact words. I said, yes, it is. He said, like H or something to that effect, it isn't. And I said, look, you can go call him, meaning to go call G. Ray Gill. I said, because that's all he gave me. So we drove from there about 3 blocks. He pulled over again. He reviewed the stuff that was in the package. Now, I didn't take nothing out of the package. I didn't even, except for seeing it on Mr. Gill's desk and them shuffling it up, putting it inside the thing. There was no knowledge. All I knew was photographs of buildings and cars and neatly drawn maps. Not like a regular city map, but it was diagrams and stuff drawn on paper. And at that time, to this day, I don't know if, again, I think I took a cab back to the airport. Anyway, I had round trip. I went back and I discussed the fact of how upset Mr. Howard was. I discussed it with Roswell, which is A. Roswell Thompson, and also Mr. Gill. But that thing went on from there. Another subject that I know, that now this was within a span of 2 weeks prior to the assassination of the president. One of the gentlemen that fits in a thing that I know I was involved in was a thing called the organization, which we was all a part of.
All right, Joe. There you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Thomas Beckham himself, who would later go on to become a Jewish rabbi and substance abuse counselor.
And still alive, isn't he?
Supposedly, yeah, he's still alive, still doing substance abuse counseling. Possibly still a rabbi. I don't know. But he mentions there in the clip a lot of names that we've just been talking about. Jack Martin, Sergio Arcacha Smith, David Ferry, yada, yada, yada. Okay? G. Ray Gill.
Who was the lawyer for Carlos Marcello. And also, we did a previous segment a few months ago on G. Ray Gill. David Ferry was doing some work for him as well. I don't remember the extent of Jack Martin's work with him, but I think they were connected in some way as well. And of course, the Lawrence Howard story I've heard before, very intriguing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we come to more proof. We know that Hall and Howard were in Dallas, okay, in September of 63. We know that. It's documented. They were arrested there.
Yeah.
Okay. With a
Didn't
trailer.
Lester Logue bail them out?
Yeah, they had dropped off a trailer of guns at Lester Logue's house. Apparently, but they got busted. They got pulled over in a crappy automobile, just like Thomas Beckham told you Howard was in, right?
Yeah.
And I came across something, Joe, that I had never seen before, and it intrigued me verily. Check this out, folks. Check.
If it intrigues you, it intrigues me.
Yeah, check this out. This is dated September 18th, 1963. It is a receipt, okay, from Richard Hathcock, signed by him and Lorenzo using his war name, Hall. Lorenzo Hall, okay? Now, this receipt says this. I received this date from Lorenzo Hall, $400. Now, this is 1963 money, Joe.
4,000. Easy math.
Yeah.
Quick math. Yep. Times it by 10.
As full price for a Bolex motion picture camera equipped with 3 deluxe lenses, including a telephoto lens. Lorenzo Hall paid by 2 checks, one drawn on the account of the Committee to Free Cuba. Okay. In the amount of $350, and another drawn on the account of a resident of La Habra in the amount of $150. I gave Hall back $100 cash, I'm assuming, from these 2 checks. Hall agrees that should either or both of these checks be no good, bounce to the sky, or not be paid, his wife, Mrs. Ann Hall, will pay $400 to me, plus another $100, which I would have to return to my bank, totaling the full $500, which the bank handed over for the checks on this date. Hall attests that he and his wife have a joint bank account and that the money due me would be paid from such funds. Mr. Hall, or Mrs. Hall, works at California Milling in LA, California, and Mr. Hall has filled in the name and address here as evidence of his good faith in this matter. Now, what's interesting is, of course, there is an account in the Warren Commission documents, okay, of a separate, Joe, a separate incident with Richard Hathcock and Lauren Hall. Okay. As you see from that receipt, Joe, there's no mention of a Johnson 30-06 rifle, is there?
There is not.
There is not a mention of golf clubs either, is there?
There is not. I would have caught that.
Yeah. So this happened in September. The other account where they supposedly picked up the Johnson 30-06 rifle and traded the golf clubs and gave them another check. There was also cut on this Committee to Free Cuba or whatever it is. When they picked up the Johnson 30-06 out of Hawk, allegedly happened a couple weeks before November 22nd, 1963 in November. But
early November, maybe late October, maybe. Yeah.
Why in the hell would Lauren Hall and Lawrence Howard be purchasing a $4,000 Bolex motion picture? Okay, this thing was some dinky ass plastic looking, I don't know what that dickhead thing looking on the back of it is. It's a 16 millimeter.
Might be a bulb at the top on the left side.
I mean, this thing is designed to be a very high quality. I mean, this is not just a, like a Zapruder type camera. This is supposedly at the time a motion picture quality camera.
Yeah.
Equipped with 3 different lenses, which you can see, and also a telephoto lens. I mean, this is This is insane.
$4,000 is a lot of money for a camera today in 1963. I don't care how much money you have. That's a lot of money. And
So why are you buying that kind of camera before you make the trip to Dallas?
in theory, you would want to document something.
You'd think? Imagine, Joe, if there is a 16 millimeter movie camera film, high quality, motion picture worthy of the assassination that somebody has in their possession.
In like an attic or in
in
a bomb shelter somewhere. I mean, who knows?
I mean,
it could be in a storage unit from like those storage war auctioning shows. Like, you don't know.
Yeah, or deep locked away in H.L. Hunt's safe. Who knows where this thing ended up.
And by the way, the Hunts, H.L. Hunts, I think it's grandchildren own the Kansas City Chiefs now.
Yeah.
So,
but Lauren Hall did not have this kind of money back then. Okay, folks, he wasn't working.
He was pawning things off.
Yeah, he's buying this thing from a pawn shop in Hollywood, California. Is obviously a pawned motion picture camera. And right after this, they're going to Dallas where they get busted, which is suspect when you put all of these little pieces of the puzzle, Joe, together.
Yeah.
You have what Beckham said. You have what's going on in New Orleans, and it leads to Dallas from California. You picking this up. You have these anti-Castro operators in the mix. Mercenaries.
Yeah.
Very anti-communist leaning idealists.
Yeah.
All seemingly falling into place in the months leading up to the assassination. Very, very interesting, Joe.
100%. It's fascinating for sure. And that account of Beckham delivering maps and money to Lawrence Howard. I mean, Lawrence Howard is definitely a suspect I keep in high regard. I think it was Delsa and
Burris.
Yeah, they went to him and like he was like, I'm loaded. He's like, he wouldn't meet them at his house, and he met them at like a gas station, and he's like double packing, like double gun or whatever. He was not going to suffer the fate as possibly some other JFK witnesses and or plotters or participators ended up falling into.
This was an HSCA interview that they did with Lawrence Howard at his house after they both explained to each other that everybody was packing heat. Okay. He made it real known to Delsa and Burris that they, he's packing heat, and they said, well, we are too. Okay. So, well, let's go to your house, have a sit down interview. And they said they left that interview thinking that they had a bad feeling, their feeling was they had just talked to somebody who was deeply involved in some capacity with the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Burris or Delsa, but they leaned over kind of the top of the car when they got back, and he goes, that guy was involved.
Yeah.
I don't know which one it was. I can't remember. It was one of them.
It was Delsa. It was
Delsa.
This comes from a 20+ year homicide detective from New Orleans.
Yes.
Okay. A gritty, hardened cop with instincts.
Instincts. Exactly.
That wasn't some guy right out of the academy. Okay.
Yeah. Doing some congressional aid working on the HSCA. This was not him. I mean, they were considered, both of them, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, two of the best investigators along with Ed Lopez.
They did some amazing work.
Yeah.
And next up, from August 31st, 1967, from the Office of the District Attorney, we have a letter addressed to Mr. Edward Gurnis, who is in the United States Penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia. So this is Garrison's office sending a letter to a federal prison inmate in Atlanta. They say,
What
"Dear
year?
Mr.
Do you know?
Huh?
Do you know the date?
67.
Okay, thank you.
Dear Mr. Gurnis, this office is writing to you in regard to confidential information that was received, which revealed that you may be in possession of certain facts concerning the investigation being conducted by this office into the conspiracy to assassinate the late President John F. Kennedy. Since we are not in receipt of any voluntary information from you, we are soliciting your cooperation in this matter, mainly to determine if this confidential information is true and correct. If so, to gain your complete confidence in assisting this office. The main points of this confidential information stated that you have knowledge about Clay Shaw being Clay Bertrand and also Lambert. It further relates to a Sanchez Diaz. We feel that if these facts are true, you could greatly assist this office. Your prompt reply in this matter is appreciated. Blah, 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 blah. Very truly yours, C.J. Navarre, Investigator, District Attorney's Office. Okay? So on September 7th, 1967, Mr. Edward Gurnis decides to write back. Dear Sir, your letter arrived yesterday. However, I could not telephone you as they do not allow it here. I don't know what information you possess or how you acquired it, but I can say this. Yes, I knew both of them under various nom de plumes, and at various places such as Hammond, Louisiana, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Oak Cliff, Texas, and Mexico. However, I do not care to discuss it through the mail. If you should be in Atlanta in the future and would come out here, I will talk to you. I remain sincerely, Edward Gurnis, Box Penitentiary Lane, I don't know, Atlanta, Georgia, right? So they did. They sent people out to talk to him, and we'll have to save all of that for maybe another show. But it's interesting that he mentioned there, again, we're Lake Charles, Hammond, Oak Cliff, Mexico.
Oak Cliff, really interesting.
Because Clay Shaw had ties, I believe, to Hammond. I think his father lived there, or he was from there or something. I could be wrong. Or maybe David Ferry stayed there at that all-boys college when he didn't want to come back to New Orleans. I don't know. I digress. And then I come across May 15th, Joe, May 15th, 67, a letter from a person that lives in Washington, D.C., and he is writing to Garrison. Okay? He says, Dear District Attorney Garrison, I have for some time been quite interested in the continuing Kennedy assassination controversy and in your investigation of it. I feel quite strongly about this, though not because of any particular affection for the late president, and you have my wholehearted support in your efforts. Several months ago, as a private citizen and quite on my own because of the dissatisfaction with some of the things that I found in the Warren report, I began doing my own research, most of it concentrated on searching through city directories and phone books. I found material in direct contradiction to what was published in the Warren report, and I found other things that seemed most odd to me, and at least too coincidental. Last week, after reading the newspaper stories concerning the Oswald Shaw Ruby number code, I felt that you were moving close to the names and addresses area of my own research, and I decided to write you. Okay. So it says, most sincerely, Frank Green. He attached some things that he has found, which include, Joe.
Okay.
From the Warren Report, Appendix 12, quote, Heidel was a favorite alias used by Oswald on a number of occasions. Diligent search has failed to reveal any person in Dallas or New Orleans by that name. It was merely a creation for his own purpose. Well, this guy found out that in reality, the 1963 Dallas City and Telephone directories list 3 individuals actually named Heidel. A Mrs. William Heidel, who was a widow, and at another address, a William Hydell Jr. and his wife, likely his or her son and wife, plus a Hydell Hardware Company. All were still listed as of 1966. So, how much searching did the FBI really do about the last name Hydell and this alias? It's really weird. The second point he makes, Joe, is Richard Popkins II Oswald states, without giving any name, that Oswald, when arrested, had on him a salary stub from the American Bakery Company in Dallas, made out to someone who had lived at a former Oswald address, and dated August 1960, a period when Oswald was supposed to be in Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very odd incident, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why would Oswald have a 1960 somebody else's 1960 pay stub on him at the time of his arrest? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, the name listed on this bakery pay stub was James Jackson. Okay. The 1962 Dallas City Directory lists a James Jackson employed by the American Bakery Company. This is back when phone books used to tell you a lot of things other than just a name and a phone number. They tell you where somebody worked or what they did for a living, weird stuff like that. At 214 West Neely Street. Oswald lived there in March and April of 1963. No mention of a salary stub or Jackson in the Warren report at all. So I don't know how Popkin got his information for the second Oswald book. Number 3, Oswald's cab driver was the late William Wayne Wally, right? In 1963, a Wyatt Wayne Wally is listed as an employee of Jaggers Childs Stovall. Interesting.
Very.
Number 4, the 1962 Fort Worth City Directory, okay, lists an O.H. Lee. Where have we heard that name before, Joe?
That was the name that Oswald had allegedly used at the rooming house. Is that true?
Yeah.
Beckley.
The 1962 Fort Worth City Directory lists O.H. Lee at 1715 South Riverside Drive. O.H. Lee's wife is Nona M. Lee. Oswald's wife was Marina N. Okay. Number 5, the following is a 7-year listing ending in 1963 for Jack Ruby, taken from the Dallas City Directories. Excuse me. Some of the other names could, of course, be listed at Ruby addresses through overlapping, having lived there after Ruby moved. If this is not the case, then Ruby knew them and lived with them. So, from 1956 to 63, okay, 56, Ruby is listed at 3927 Cole Avenue, apartment B. 1957, Ruby is listed at the above address, but under the street listing, however, the apartment's occupant is named Noble McKenzie. McKenzie at this address under name listing and identified as an office worker at the Amon Carter Airport. In 1958, Ruby is listed living at 4156 Hawthorne. It's 58. 59, Ruby is listed at 4156 Hawthorne again. Under the street listing, occupant is listed as Johnny Myers. Under the name listing, Myers' occupation given as salesman for the Petroleum Heat Company. 1960, we have 2 addresses given for Ruby, listed as living at 4156 Hawthorne still, and as the householder at 4727 Homer Avenue, apartment 105. Under street listing, occupant at 4156 Hawthorne is a Mrs. Patricia Hay. Occupation given as a dental assistant to Dr. John Mitchell. 1962, Ruby's listed at 2 addresses, listed at 3929 Rollins, address of sister Eva Grant. Second listing is at 4806.5 Brian, but under street listing, name of occupant is Jack Fisher, which could have been a Ruby alias. This is in 62. Ruby supposedly living with his sister. It's weird. 63. Two addresses listed again at his sister's, 3929 Rollins, and then 500 South Marcellus. It says here Jack Fisher could, of course, been a Ruby alias, and by a curious coincidence, a Jack Fisher's drive-in grocery is listed in 1963 at 1026 South Beckley.
Whoa.
And Oswald lived at 1026 North Beckley. In 1964, Jack Fisher's drive-in grocery was no longer in business. This probably means nothing, but it's hard to ignore. So this is another case of somebody, just a private citizen researcher, sending stuff to Garrison to try to help out his investigation. Just taking one small part of the puzzle, like a telephone book from New York. He can access this stuff and try to see it. And then the last thing, Joe, I wanted to talk about here real quick is an incident that occurred on November the 14th, 1963.
Okay.
Now, this is a statement of someone named Mrs. Corinne Villard. Okay. And this was given to Garrison on February 28th, 1967. Okay. So they're interviewing her, and this is her story. On Thursday, November 14th, okay, this is a week before the assassination, basically.
Yeah.
I was employed at the Newport Motel as a clerk and PBX operator. My boss, Mr. Peter Garisco, who owns the hotel, had left for a Rotary Club meeting at about 11:45 a.m. The meeting was at the Hub Club and was to start at noon. At around 12:40 that day, Jack Ruby came into the motel and asked for Pete. I told him where Pete had gone, and we started to talk. He told me of his business in Dallas and how it was nice to get away from it once in a while, and how he had even gone to Mexico for a few days. This is Ruby talking. He did not tell me when or where he had been in Mexico, but that he had already gone there. He introduced himself as Garisco very well, and that he wanted to see him. He said he was on his way to Dallas, and he was talking to me alone. And he was by himself at that point. He could come in alone. I then noticed this man sitting at a table about 15 feet from me, fumbling with the phone and causing the lights to light up on the switchboard. The man had come in right after Ruby, a few seconds later. I then asked him if I could help him, and he said that he was just waiting for someone. He continued fumbling with the phone, but I didn't say anything to him as he appeared very nervous. He appeared that he didn't want to be looked at or talked to by anyone. There were other people in the place, but he just sat there and fumbled with the phone and didn't talk to anyone. I kept looking at him because he made me nervous as the lights on the board were lighting up. I talked with Ruby until about 1:10 p.m., and during this time, he continuously turned around and looked at Oswald and winked at him and kept talking. He continually stood right in front of my desk, and the customers had to walk around him. Ruby also mentioned that he was either trying to charter a plane out of Patterson or going to catch a plane out of Patterson. He mentioned that he knew where to go in Patterson and that he was familiar with Patterson, as he used to come down to the Hub Club in Morgan City and gamble. The Hub Club is owned by Pete Garisco. And I used to work there too, and I have seen Carlos Marcello gambling there on many occasions. Marcello has also been in the Newport Motel and is a good friend of Pete as well. After Ruby, finished talking, he walked out of the motel and walked towards his automobile. He walked out of the side door under the carport, and Oswald got up and walked out the front door. They met at the car and both got in. The car was at least 2 or 3 years old. I don't know the make and I can't remember the color. And as I look at this picture of Oswald here, I am sure that this is the man that was in the motel with Ruby that day. He had a light colored t-shirt on, maybe faded green or faded blue or some old dirty blue jeans. There was grease on the jeans and the shirt and a little grease on his face. His hair was messed up. Being as he was, I just thought that he was a mechanic. Ruby made no mention about car trouble. When Mr. Grisco got back, I told him that some men from Dallas were looking for him, but I didn't want to mention his name to him. He didn't question on who it was. He just more or less passed it off. However, I remembered that on the next day, Friday, November 15th, he made a call to Dallas and charged the call to a Patterson number. The operator called me the next day and told me that Garisco had phoned Dallas and charged the call to a Patterson number and asked me if I knew the number. And I told her that I did not know the number and that she should talk to Mr. Garisco himself. I also remember that Mr. Garisco also made another call to Dallas the Monday after Ruby shot Oswald, but I don't know who he called. I do know that the call was charged to the motel. I remember Ruby also from when he used to come and gamble at the Hub Club from 1945 to 47. He used to come to Morgan City with a group of men from New Orleans to gamble at the Hub Club. They used to always talk about how it took them only 1 hour and 15 minutes to get here. Ruby used to always be very neat and well-dressed, excuse me, and always wore white suits and shoes during the summer months. He was a good tipper, and I have seen him gamble many times in the company of Carlos Marcello. Joe. It is common knowledge that Marcello loaned Garisco the money to build the motel, the Newport Motel, but no one could prove it. Also, Marcello has a sister who lives in Patterson. I can remember that after Ruby shot Oswald, I told him that this was the man who was looking for him that day at the motel. He became very nervous, and when I asked if he knew Ruby, he said, "Why do you ask?" And I repeated that he was the man that came looking for him. He got pale and nervous and said that he'd better call the FBI. A Mr. Leland Lynn from the FBI was then contacted by Morgan City Police. When the agent questioned me, I gave him the wrong description of Ruby and didn't mention anything about Oswald because I was afraid of what Mr. Garisco would do to me. He stood right over me while I was talking with the agent and kept interfering, and finally the agent said that he would check it out and left. As I did not hear from him after 3 weeks, I called him up and he came to my house and he said that he had checked my story and it was a case of mistaken identity. Pete admitted to the FBI that he knew Ruby. Around the last part of September or first part of October, as it was just getting daylight, a woman came into the motel alone and said to me, "Room, room." I asked her for her money, and she put up 4 fingers and said, "4. 4. I said, $10. And she shrugged and didn't say anything and just walked out. She walked to an old beat-up model car, two-tone, either blue or beige or green or beige. There was a man in the car that appeared to be holding a baby, and there were boxes and clothes stacked up on the back seat. This woman talked very much like Marina Oswald, but of course I couldn't swear that it was her. I particularly remember her hair. It was sort of golden, reddish color. They drove off in the direction of Patterson, and I didn't mention this to the FBI either. I don't know how this picture of the man you say is David Ferry. I'm glad Mr. Garrison has opened this investigation, and I want to help. However, I would want Pete Garisco to know. So very weird. Very weird. Sounds to me like that the FBI checked into it. Mistaken identity for sure. Probably Larry Crayford, if it was Ruby.
That's what I was thinking.
Type of thing. But again,
Especially,
you know,
you said messy, right? Oswald was never known. You said,
yeah,
like,
never known to be messy or greasy or.
Yeah.
It just sounds like when she's describing him, you know, just giving her the creeps while he's messing with the phone, and then this guy didn't want to be looked at. Sounds a lot like Larry Crayford, you know, with missing part of his grill, you know, just being a creep, just being a weirdo.
Yeah.
As I
can
quote
see that.
Radiohead lyrics. But anyway, that's all I got, Joe. Receipts from New Orleans, and I know you got some stuff to get into as well, to kind of as a follow-up to our last show when we were talking about the Paines, Ruth Paine in particular, and Michael Paine, and their interactions with Marina and Lee Harvey Oswald. So let's get right into that and get some follow-up to some of the information that we had on the last show.
Let's do it, sir. And, I think we talked about this pre-show, but I told you I had a surprise that was like a late Happy 300 thing. I didn't.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I didn't play that. Or I was like thinking, did I play that?
No,
okay.
you forgot.
Yeah, so we'll do it now. And let's see. This is the congratulations on your 300 show and perseverance. Just keep on coming in. So this is from a colleague in the community. His name is Mr. Chuck Ocelli of the Ocelli Effect, and also multitasker extraordinaire at Lancer, including investigator into the scooter incident. I will give him credit. He solved it within like 10 minutes. So this is what Mr. Chuck had to say to you. And to fairness to Chuck, actually, Doug sent this to me about 2 weeks ago, and I forgot to play it last week. So.
Chuck Ocelli from the Ocelli Effect, sending out a special little recording. This is to congratulate Rob Clark and his assorted cast of characters, guests, etc., along with the late edition of Joey the Scooter over there for the 300th episode of the Lone Gunman Podcast. Increasingly informative and entertaining, action-packed as per usual, and unique in its style as well as content. Love it, man. Been happy to call you a colleague for damn near a decade and have you be part of the myths and all that stuff, the episodes we did on the Ocelli Effect. Lots of love, luck, and continued success in the future. Lone Gunman, 300 episodes.
Wow. That was awfully nice of Chuck to do. Really appreciate it. And yes, make sure you're checking out the Ocelli Effect as well, people. Chuck does great work over there.
Yeah.
He's a big supporter of a Lancer.
Yeah.
And speaking
good
of
guy overall.
Yeah, definitely good guy overall. And speaking of Lancer, Joe, I believe that's your first.
Yeah. And he also has, I think, Carmine on either every month or every 2 weeks, and also Larry Hancock. So it's definitely worth.
Big swinging dick, Larry Hancock. Yes.
Yes.
We need to get him on this show.
Oh, it's coming, Rob.
Okay.
I'm saving it for his book that is coming out, The Oswald Puzzle, with him and David Boylan. And yeah, as you know, maybe some things we have talked to him about and things we have discovered will be in that book. And it should be coming out by the end of the year. Yes. The last update I heard. So definitely he will be on at some point. I would wager a good amount of money. So we're looking forward to that.
Looking forward to that. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of November in Dallas, the Lancer Conference, and I am thrilled to be going there for the second straight year, presenting for the second straight year. Still kind of a shock to me, being just a regular listener, Scafusa in the community, and my name's up there with a lot of great people. I'm just going to name a few: Robert and Janet Grodin, Larry Hancock, Doug Campbell. Alex Harris.
That was another big swinging dick from the Dallas action and quick hits.
Maybe the biggest swinging dick.
Certainly the loudest.
I'm just going to name a couple. Chuck Ocelli, Gail Nix Jackson, Paul Blow. I met him last
Croissant.
year. Croissant. Carmine Salvestano, of course, good friend of the show. Mike Swanson, David Boylan. I met them both last year. In addition to Dick Russell.
No, get it right, Joe.
I know. I'm letting you say it.
Dirty Dick Russell.
Yes.
Yes.
Will,
did I ever tell you the story about Doug and Dick Russell in the bathroom at the conference we went to?
I think you did, but it's worth repeating.
So it made for a great awkward moment. I could have swore that it was because Dick Russell and Bill Simmons kind of look alike. Okay, kind of. At a glance, you know. And I told Doug's like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I said, hey man, I think Bill Simmons just went in the bathroom. I said, so he went in the bathroom. And they're both standing there taking a piss, and Doug's like, hey, how you doing? It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Simpage. My name's Doug Campbell. And the guy's like, I'm Dick Russell. Not Bill Simpage. Yeah, so it was an awkward moment for Doug, but it makes for a great story of awkwardness.
Yeah, but that was what, like, how long ago?
10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
of course, Doug and Bill Sipich are now friends and colleagues, and they talk. So it is funny for sure.
It is funny.
Yeah, and as well as Matt DeWitt.
Matt Dowdett.
Dowett. I'm sorry, sir.
Dowdett.
Yes, of the Tippett situation there. Mr. Fred Litwin, who's been on our show. Yep, and Mr. Jeffrey Meek as well. And I'm sure a lot more names to be announced. And so, Rob, before I continue, on Thursday night.
Don't forget, Joe, they need to use our code
Gunman
10.
Gunman 10.
If you're ordering tickets, go on the website. The link will be below in the description. And any ticket package, just put in the code Gunman 10, you'll get 10% off.
Yeah.
So,
and that's like $10-$20, and depending on the ticket you buy, and you can then use that money to
buy Joe a drink or a scooter ride.
Took the words out of my
and
mouth.
a scooter for 5 minutes for Joe.
Yes, rent the scooter
and race him.
Oh, there we go.
On Elm Street.
I was thinking of going up the knoll, like the motorcycle rider did.
Yeah, there you go. Just leave it laying on the sidewalk and run up the knoll.
Yeah, just maybe
with Alex filming you in recreation.
Yeah, right after the limo goes by. Because the cool thing, Rob, is last year it wasn't on the 22nd, right? It was my first time in Dallas ever. This year, I'm flying in Thursday night, and a bunch of people are going to the Campisi restaurant.
Yeah, Campisi.
And Doug messaged me, and he's like, do you want to come? They're having a private event in the Mafia room. I'm like, do you have to ask?
They know more.
Yeah. So that is really cool to go to Campisi's, to be in the Mafia room, to talk to different researchers. And then on Friday, the 22nd.
Godfather Borelli is in the house.
Yes, I am a Godfather.
Start.
It is true.
You will have a plate of spaghetti and a side of garlic bread. Keep it coming.
At least. And then Friday, you know how they do the 12:30 whatever moment of silence. Like I've never been there on the 22nd, and then the conference starts a couple hours after.
So you are in for a treat, my friend. If Judith Baker and Beverly Oliver are doing it, you are in for a treat, buddy. That's all I got to say about that.
Oh, I'm ready for that 14-inch gap, bro.
Yeah, bring a barf bag with you too.
But it's going to be fun. Me and Doug are going to be going around having a blast, and pictures will be sent in live time, and who knows what else? Who knows? But I'm looking forward to it. So definitely, if you are in Dallas or you plan on going, use the code Gunman10 for 10% off your conference tickets.
Yes,
and
any ticket package whatsoever. Yes.
Yeah. So please do that. And before I get into my topic, I made the dopest breakfast sandwich the other day with Silk City. 3 different hot sauces. You could see like the 3 different shades of red there. One like kind of orange.
Yes.
Honey hop habanero, killer hot sauce, and one of my newest favorites, the Just Joking buffalo sauce. And this, I tweeted it a couple weeks ago, but wow, it was amazing. And
Which reminds me, Joe, we have an offer for our very own hot sauce. We just need to come up with some names and some flavors.
yes.
So comment below on this episode, folks, if you're still listening, of some flavors, some possible names that you'd like to see in a Lone Gunman Silk City collab.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, and I think the leader in the clubhouse was like the what was it? Oh my god, I'm blanking.
I was thinking
the Jack Ruby, he would just eat him and stuff. That was it.
Yes. Yeah.
But
I was
but
thinking
maybe
something like a ghost pepper, smoky barbecue sauce, something like that.
Yeah. With Joey on a scooter, a little cartoon guy, like flying over Ruby and his hot sauce and eating.
Yeah, just send us your ideas. Actually, put them in the comment section below.
Yeah,
and we'll get our ideas over to Jeff and see if we can make this thing happen. That would be amazing.
Yes, sir. And before I continue here, I just want to remind everyone, even though we are not live and we cannot interact with you in real time, please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Rob, we have almost 70 likes. We're like 1 or 2 under, which on our last show, which I think is the most we've had like-wise. And that's really cool. Even though we're not live, we will of course, appreciate your super chats. The Lancer trip is not cheap, but we love every one of you, and we'll shout you out next Friday when we are live for sure from the show.
All you gotta do is, I believe it, just hit that thanks button underneath the video here.
Yep,
and you'll be able to help a brother
get the Lancer. Yes, sir. All right, so on with the JFK stuff. So we talked last week because, Rob, we are, at the end of the day, we are
scafoozes.
Yes, we are. But we are also men of the people.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen that support our show. And we had a comment or 2 on our live, and then a comment. I got a message, and then I think we had a comment or 2 on the YouTube comments about the Ruth and Marina letters that we had briefly touched upon last week when we were dealing with.
I thought you were going to say lesbian love affair, but okay, letters will work.
Yes. And I have a little, these are like, I probably read like 20 or 30, 2 or 3 dozen back and forth letters. And I didn't realize there were that many, but throughout the whole summer of 1963, they were exchanging a ton of letters. And we're going to follow up on some of the topics we talked.
You sit back. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, dear Marina.
Yeah.
I sit here on this hot Texas night thinking about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Please continue before I make this podcast X-rated.
Yeah, right. So this is actually just a screenshot of one of the letters from Miss Marina Oswalt at 4907. Rob, look at how she spells magazine. She's like MOGUZIN.
But in all honesty, Joe,
yeah,
that's pretty goddamn good handwriting for somebody who's been in the country less than a year.
Yes, it is.
And supposedly doesn't know English.
Yeah, and if you look at the Irving, Texas, you could see like the R is kind of backwards. So I was actually wondering about that. I was like, how did she kind of write good English? And I looked at some of her other letters, and if you look, I'm not a handwriting analyst, but you could see that kind of trails off to the right, almost like downward. And
She's definitely traveling down.
And even her Russian letters, because Ruth and Marina are writing in Russian to each other right now. And even Marina's Russian letters have that kind of downward slant. So it's definitely her. Interesting to kind of think about her proficiency in writing English. I mean, talking it is one thing, writing is another. So we've talked about this before. But this is an example. This is actually a Ruth letter to Marina, and I'm going to read a little bit from it.
Are you?
Well, there's a transcription on Mary Farrell.
Oh, okay.
It's actually Commission Exhibit 410, 411, and 412. So this is actually in the War Commission. And I think I had mentioned last show that I kind of read them or read a couple of them, but I hadn't read them like 20 or 30 letters back to back in a row. So This is some of the transcription. This is on July 11th, 1963, from Ruth to Marina. Dear Marina, if Lee doesn't wish to live with you anymore and prefers that you would go to the Soviet Union, think about the possibility of living with me. It would be necessary, of course, to live dependent upon me for a year or two while the babies are small, but please do not be embarrassed. You are an able girl. Later, after a year or two, you could find work in America. Granted, Marina's in America. I think that after a year or two, I will live in Philadelphia. My sister lives in Washington. Of course, Rob, we just touched upon that last episode. Sylvia Hoke.
We did.
There will be work for you somewhere. You know, I have long received from my parents. I lived dependent a long time. I would be
you can work with us. You can work with me and my sister and her husband at the CIA. We can move to DC.
Ruth, I would be happy to be as an aunt to you, and I can, even though they're not that different in age. We have sufficient money. Michael would be glad. This I know. He just gave me $500 extra for the vacation or something necessary. With this money, it is possible to pay the doctor and hospital in October when the baby is born. They're talking about Rachel. Believe God. All will be well for you and the children. I confess that I think that the opportunity for me to know you came from God. Perhaps it is not so, but I think and believe so. It disturbs me a great deal that I can explain my thoughts so badly, but it disturbs me more not to hear news from you and what you are thinking and doing. Marina, come to my home the last part of September without fail, either for 2 months or 2 years, and don't be worried about the money.
We love you long time. Love Ruth.
Well, of course, at this time, Rob, Michael and Ruth were not living in the same house. They were not divorced. They were, quote unquote, separated.
Yeah, and we call that separated.
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit. But Ruth continues, I don't want to hurt Lee with this invitation to you. So she's aware that this is going to hurt Lee, right?
Yeah.
Only I think that it would be better that you and Lee do not live together if you do not receive happiness. I understand how Michael feels, Michael Paine. He doesn't love me, and he wants the chance to look for another life and another wife. He must do this, it seems, and so it is better for us not to live together. I don't know how Lee feels, but I would like to know. Surely things are hard for him too. I hope that he would be glad to see you with me where he can know that you and the children will receive everything that is necessary, and he won't need to worry about it. Thus, he could start his life again. Right, please, sincerely, Ruth. So, very interesting. Oh wow, do I have the Lancer thing still up? No. Okay, I have this up. Sorry.
You have the Russian version.
Yeah, got it. So, Ruth actually writes the day after, right? Marina hasn't got this letter yet. Michael and I talked yesterday evening about the invitation to you and the children to live at my home. It seems one not need to consider this, quote, independence upon someone. Why? Listen. Michael receives from Bell Helicopter Company each year $9,200 salary. That's about $92,000 today. He also gets money each year from a grandmother. We talked about his kind of elite background in family history as inheritance.
Trust fund or whatever.
Yeah, but it only says 500 or more a year. So Ruth is kind of saying, I don't know how much it is. This is just what he gave me. So I don't think we can really quote that, but I noted that number nonetheless. I spoke of it in the last letter, but it didn't say what the money was from. He has to pay the government about $1,800 in taxes each year. But for each who lives dependent upon him, he receives a $600 reduction in his tax. He already receives a reduction for 4 people, him, Ruth, and their daughter and son, 4 dependents who live upon his salary. All the same, he has to pay a tax of around $1,800 a year. Granted, that's like $18,000 out of $92,000. I'll get to those calculations in a second. I did some really nerdy financial stuff you'll see soon. For each more independence upon him, he receives a reduction of $600 a year. That's if you, June, and the baby live here. That's Marina and her not yet born child and June as dependents. If Lee doesn't count you as a dependent in that year, so she's saying this is only going to work if Lee doesn't claim you as dependents. So she's essentially trying to get a tax break for having them live there and screwing Lee's tax rate, who makes a ton less. And if you think the 3 dependents Lee could claim, which would be June, Rachel, and Marina, that $1,800 would be a huge percentage more than based on Lee's salary than it would Michael's salary, right? Like,
yeah, but I don't think they had like earned income credit back then either, but something like it, but maybe not called that.
Right. So, thus it is evident that we do not suffer from the following invitation. So I think what she's saying, Ruth is saying here, is if you come live with us, we're not going to suffer greatly if we can claim you as dependents, type of thing. Come here at the end of September. We can give you $100 a month and pay for the doctor and hospital. For $100, you could buy what you want. Pickles. Didn't know Maria liked pickles. That's the first thing.
Yes,
Clothes.
she does. Big dill pickle.
Oh, man. I knew I was setting up for that. Clothes, stamps, gifts for your aunt in the USSR, etc. It would not be necessary to ask me or to receive permission to buy something. Of course, $100 is not that much per month. It would be from January 64 to December 64. So she's talking about all of 1964, Marina living with her, which is really
because in 1963, even if she moves in with them in September, the majority of the year she had lived with Lee. So they could not claim her for the year 1963.
Probably not, but I'm not sure that they wouldn't try.
Well, they can try, but
right.
I don't think it works that way.
I agree. I think you need to show proof, but like you said, she's saying 1964. So the house, furniture already here, not necessary to buy. I love you, Marina, and I want to live with you. I just hope that you and Lee will agree. Yeah. If it is easier for you, I can come for you in June and September. I think in New Orleans.
Which is what ended up happening.
Yep.
By the way.
I would want to talk with Lee about everything. How is it possible to telephone you and Lee? What is the family name of his uncle and the number of their telephone? I hope to see you soon, Marina. I think you don't have to return to the Soviet Union if you don't want to. Sincerely, Ruth. So this is, I think, 2 nights later after that, Marina writes another letter to
Ruth. Ruth writes
yes, another letter to Marina. Thank you, Rob. Ow, I have made a mistake. Michael explained to me yesterday that the reduction, $600 for each dependent, must be subtracted from the salary, not the tax. So
What?
so it's the $1,800 deduction, Rob, would be from his taxable income, which would be that $92,000, not canceling out, say, the $1,800.
Real quick, because you jumped into 92,000. Where are you getting that number from?
What 2,000?
You said 92,000.
Yeah, so 91,900.
You haven't explained how you got that number yet.
Okay, I will right now. This is from Ruth's note to Marina that says Michael receives Bell Helicopter Company each year $91,098. So I rounded it up $2 to 92,000.
That's not 91,000. That's 9,000.
But I'm timesing it by 10 to account for inflation.
Oh,
it's a 90.
Okay.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. Maybe people in the audience were confused too. So, yeah, the easy math is to kind of times it by 10. It's a little more, but it's essentially a $92,000 salary for. So
right.
That's where I'm getting that number from. Thank you for clarifying. This is the next one. I made a mistake. I can't give you. She says, Michael explained to me yesterday that the reduction, $1,800, must be subtracted from the salary, not the tax. When the salary can be considered less, the government wants less tax, but not $1,800 less as I wrote you. And she writes in quotations, it's better not to write letters at 2 a.m. Interesting. So Ruth is writing letters to Marina at 2 a.m. But it seems that it would be for Michael about $450 each year less. That's a discount that he would receive. That's $4,500 in taxable income out of his $92,000 payroll. If he had 3 more people dependent on his salary. We are not so rich as I thought, but we can do it if you wish to live with the children at my house. We would give you $10 each week. That's important, Rob. From this, you could buy what you wish, clothes, stamps, but not food. I will buy the food and also pay for the doctors, medicines, etc. Commission Exhibit 412.
Yeah, she went from $100 a month to $10 a week, which is $40 a month.
Right. So, and then Ruth continues, you don't understand how it would be useful and pleasant for me to live with you. I very much want to learn Russian, but how can I? At home with the children, it is very difficult to study, and I have little practice with the language. Yet you're writing full multi-page letters in Russian to Marina.
Yeah, like you already know the language. Okay.
I mean, you could say you want to master it more. That's
right. But she's already studied it. She knows it. She can speak it. She can write it.
She's writing it, which is, I think, harder than speaking it.
Yeah.
Ruth, we don't have to live like rich people. We can live simply but healthily. I would count that it cost me little to buy groceries and pay the doctor and hospital and receive a knowledge of Russian and help with my mistakes in conversation and in letters. She talks about sending her calcium tablets. So Very interesting. So I did go around.
What?
Were you saying? I said go. Were you saying something?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay, sorry. So I made a little breakdown here, and this is going to get a little complicated, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as I can.
This is what we call, folks, FinTech Joe.
Yeah, this is actually like basic budgeting, but about $9,200 Bell Helicopter annual salary, $92,000 in 2024. $500 per year with the inheritance. So that's about $5,000. That's not that much. I actually thought it was $5,000, which would have made it $50,000, which would have made a lot more sense, but it isn't. And because it's probably in a trust, as you mentioned before, and is probably not subject to tax, I didn't include it in my calculations. And third here, you have the dependent credit, $600 per dependent, $1,800 total. Marina, June, and Rachel, $18,000 today. So you have about $1,800 from an income of $91.98, and that is equivalent. That equals out to an 18.6% federal tax rate. Okay.
Yep.
So then, instead of the taxes, $1,800, and the dependent credit canceling each other out, you actually subtract $1,800 from the $9,200 salary. That equals about $7,400 taxable income. And if you multiply that by that same tax rate as the previous year, which Ruth stated in her letters, that'd be about $1,376. And if you deducted that from the $1,800, that'd be about $424 or $4,200 in tax savings for the year. Ruth stated in her letter that if Marina and her two kids were dependents of the Paines, they would save $450, aka $4,500. So she's not far off. And the interesting thing, we're going to go back. Ruth offered Marina $10 a week. There are 52 weeks in the year, Rob. So that is $520. Ruth essentially is offering more money in just allowance than the Paines would have saved in their tax savings for the three added Oswald dependents. Ruth also offered to pay for all the food, doctors, and medicine, arguably the three biggest expenses for a new mother. And of course, was not charging Marina rent either. So,
this seems like a lot of nickel and dime bullshit for somebody making $92,000 a year comparatively.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they're basing whether or not Marina can come live with them based on their tax savings, that it'll offset the cost of, I mean, that is ridiculous. Honestly.
It is. But the thing that stuck out to me is the tax savings, even if you did use Ruth's number of $450, or my number that I came up with is $424, which is $4,200 to $4,500. It's not even going to come close to the $5,200, $520, $10 a week for 52 weeks you're going to have to give to Marina. And that's not even accounting food, doctors, and medicine. So they're obviously here, Rob, there's not a financial motive, as far as I can tell, to have.
There seemingly is one, but there really isn't.
Right. That's what I kind of figured out here. There doesn't seem to be a financial motivation to have Marina and the kids move in. So the question is, what was the motivation? Something isn't adding up here. Is this conversation about their finances and taxes, and I thought of this randomly, the reason the Paine's tax returns were still classified?
Quite possibly.
Obviously, they're still alive too, but for my calculations, they'd be spending $100 to $200 a month on Marina and our kids, like food and stuff, it's like $1,000 or $2,000. You're talking about like $12,000 to $24,000. There wasn't a financial motive. So what was the motive? Was it out of their good heart, or was there another motive? I don't know the answer. I'm just bringing up. I'm bringing up that their numbers and all this back and forth of financial and tax matters really wasn't. I mean, they were losing either way. Now, did Ruth or Michael say, okay, if she wants to live with you, claim her as dependents, or at least I could save $5,000, which is like, close 6-7% of his salary, maybe. But would he feel comfortable with her living with a woman instead of being single? I mean, Ruth was kind of cute back then. I don't know. I'm just saying the numbers don't make sense when you calculate them. And yeah.
For shizzy, my friend.
Yeah.
For shizzy.
Right?
Something, folks. We all know about ulterior motives, and I'm sure Ruth had a few. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. Who knows? Anyway, Joseph, that's it for us. Episode 305, Lone Gunman Podcast, for Joe Borelli and your boy Big Bad Bobby. We are going to end this show on a slightly different note, Joe. I think it's going to be our go-to from now on.
Interesting.
We are going to dance up out this bitch like Dean Andrews in New Orleans. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Prepare to be entertained by our boy, jive talking lawyer, Dean Andrews. Till next week. Thanks for hanging out with us again, even though we can't be there in person kind of thing, but we kind of are kind of thing.
Pop the chat.
We'll be back live next week, and see you all then. Until next time, folks. Peace. Peace.
Being parish prison. He dare not talk for the record, but he said, "Come to Bourbon Street and I'll show you what I think of the case." The greatest lies are told in the name of truth. The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him in this strange case. Good night.